to you a way to look at AI, even if you do not know much about AI. And the idea is that, this is not the first time this has happened in human history. Such things have happened before. And look at some of the past revolutions of similar kind, which appeared as a major challenge, yet we were sufficiently intelligent to deal with these challenges and converted what was a challenge into an opportunity. And the question before us is, will history repeat again? That what appears to be a major challenge will turn into unprecedented opportunities. So as we go along, we'll see what it is that we do. So these purple questions are things that I will ask AI, and AI will give a response. So my first question to AI is, please show a good cartoon on AI. Okay, and then AI gives me this following cartoon. And let me explain this cartoon. This man, Tom Fishburne, is a very famous cartoonist for New Yorker magazine. And on the left panel, it says that AI turns, and this is a person who is presumably writing something, and he says AI turns this single bullet point into a long email I can pretend I wrote. And the receiver on the other side says AI makes a single bullet point out of this long email I can pretend I read. Okay, so this sort of summarizes the situation that, what is AI doing? Doing essentially nothing, expanding something and contracting it back. So this is the joke, that today this is all we are doing with AI, is making long sentences, many paragraphs about a very simple point, as if we are very knowledgeable. So this is a cartoon. So if you ask AI to give you a cartoon, it will give you a cartoon, and you judge the quality of the response from what AI has given. This is not the only cartoon, by the way. I had to choose from a bunch, and this one I picked. But jokes apart, okay? So two major things happened in the last 2 years. In 2024, Nobel Prize in Physics went to John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. Now, Geoffrey Hinton, you may not know, but Hopfield should ring a bell, because a few years ago, one of our very good colleagues, Deepak Dhar, and John Hopfield won the Boltzmann Medal together. They shared that. So Hopfield, the question was, why wasn't he given this prize for so long? But eventually it has come his way. So the physics community, by giving this Nobel Prize, is actually playing also a political game. It's saying that we own a share of this new thing known as artificial intelligence. Okay? As if this is not enough, the same year, the Nobel Prize in Chemistry goes to proteins, and half of it goes to this gentleman, David Baker, and he built new kinds of proteins. But look at these two gentlemen. They developed an AI model to solve a 50-year-old problem, predicting proteins' complex structure. And what's curious about this prize and this result is that their AI model solved the problem, but the people who made the model could not explain it to you how it did it. Okay, so this immediately in countries like ours, which we are so used to giving mystical qualities to non-mystical things, that will say, okay, AI is now something very strange and very mystical. And if I tell you something, you may not believe me. And I'll say, but AI says so. You say, oh, okay, then it's all right. So, but this is not a trivial matter, that what we consider physics and chemistry's biggest prize, they're both claiming AI as part of theirs. And in this particular case, we know of people who have spent their entire life work trying to figure out the structure of a final crystalline structure of a protein. And these people have solved all structures, all known structures. So these are remarkable achievements, but better yet, that they are now telling you that this very respectable community of physics and chemists, they now want a piece of the action. Okay. Now, who are left behind? The biologists. But I think that I just saw that you had a lecture probably a few days before on biology and AI, because most of these neural net are modeling functions of the brain. So it's only probably a matter of time or something like that, that the biology prize will go to some major achievement related to AI. So basically, AI is now becoming, for a place like TIFR, this is important. I give this talk to other places where the people are more interested in humanities and sociology and philosophy and so on. There, these questions are not quite as important, but here it is. Now, what will I tell you in the, with this? So this is again, this old thing that I mentioned, that we say everything, you do it 3 times. First, I'll tell you what I'll tell you, then I tell you, then I tell you that I told you. So in that vein, I'm just going to first tell you what I'm going to tell you. So I'm just going to show you some random examples of AI. And what are these examples? I ask certain questions and I get some answers, and I show you some answers. Now, the trouble is that most of these questions will have longish worded answers, and you are perhaps not so used to reading long sentences. But nevertheless, if you just put up with this, we'll see where we go. So then, after I give you certain examples, I will tell you about a historical understanding or analysis of the problem that faces us now. So I have chosen 3 examples. One is the printing press. One is Industrial Revolution, a part of which was photography. Industrial Revolution is important for us. And I'll give you a little sense of why that is so. It's special for countries like India, which had been colonies during much of the development of Industrial Revolution. And I'll tell you a bit about the game of chess, with which I'll begin and I will end. Okay. Then there will be some takeaways. What have we been doing? What do you learn from it, if you learn anything at all? But here is a reference to an excellent presentation by this gentleman. He is from ISI, and he's a practitioner. And only trouble with this lecture is delivered in Bengali. Okay. So I'm sure that if you Google him, you will find equally good lectures by him. He's a practitioner and one of our country's most important practitioners. And he will tell you that he doesn't do any AI. All he does is ML. Now, for us, we don't know the difference. But so presumably, there's a lower level activity, is machine learning. So the entire purpose of this is to take a look at man versus man-made machine. Machines are not ubiquitous, they just come up. People make them. And they make them in such a way that they become, they challenge us. And so we'll go through that history. So let's go to the next stage. What is artificial intelligence? So any answer you get, and this is the first lesson, any answer you get has to do with somebody who is making money out of giving you the answer. This is the first thing you need to know about AI, that the answers are not free and not are they charitable activity. They are mostly business activity. So it depends on who gives you an answer. You have to fold in to your analysis of the answer by recognizing who is it who is telling you all this. And therefore, you have to fold that in and come to your conclusions. So this is what IBM says, that this is their definition, is technology that enables computers and machines to simulate human learning, comprehension, problem solving, decision making, creativity, and autonomy. And then there are books. So almost seems like a joke that I'm telling you that you should read a book in order to understand AI. And I suggest that you do that, because if you read too much on your laptop, it's not good for your eyes. So if you're going to read a book instead, if that's available. In the long run, particularly the young people here, you will be thankful later that your eyes are not as bad as they would otherwise be. Now, this was a very good book to read maybe 6 months ago. But now there is a new book, okay? And this is an extraordinarily good book, okay? This has been written by two Silicon Valley folks. They're both of our origin in this country. And this is an extremely good book. And it's very easy to read, very easy to understand. And this is much more of an academic book. The series is very academic. This is a terrific book. So if your library doesn't have it, let them have it. If you can get a pirated PDF, read that, but read it nevertheless. Okay, so that's my recommendation. Now let's see what comes next. Okay, so human mind has always imagined this prospect of a monster that we create. And one of the great example is Frankenstein. And this is a great spoof, as a comedy, terrific comedy. If you have not seen it, you should see it. It's probably, you don't even have to go to Netflix. It's very old, but it's very, very good. The humor is fantastic. But the question is not about this, but about the general idea of a Frankenstein. So, is AI a man-made monster, such as in Frankenstein? If so, what to do about it? And if not, why not? And here I notice that there is a big difference in how different communities approach AI. The science and math and computer science type of folks treat it rather differently, with the same kind of anxiety, but perhaps not as much anxiety as the people on the other side, that's the humanities people. And they're baffled by what's going on. They don't know how to teach, how to give assignments. And you give an assignment, the student gives you back an ChatGPT produced assignment, and which is very fine to read. But the trouble is that the student doesn't know what's in that. If you ask them, they had just got it and just give it to you, right? So then there is going to be a huge problem. And they don't know that. And this is the great thing about being young, that you haven't yet made the errors that older people have made, and therefore you innocently go straight into the disaster area, but you don't know it. By the time you know it, it's a little late. So there are great differences between that. So the talks I have given so far have been to the humanities people. And I think that that would not appeal to you. So I have modified it to make it perhaps a little more palatable to an audience like this. Okay? The basics have not changed, but the details have. So let's see what I have now forgotten what happened. Yes. Okay. So it's a bit of personal history. You heard that I worked in this place. Actually, this is the place from where I came here. This is the NEC Research Institute. This is their building where we used to work. It's in Princeton. And I had a colleague named Lee Giles. And he had a young postdoc from Australia named Steve Lawrence. And they developed something called Sightseer, okay, in 1997, when I was still there. And we all thought that was a terrific thing that they were doing. The papers they wrote then have tens of thousands of citations themselves. And this is how to automate cite. You figure out how to get cites. But this is how to do search. Okay. So I asked Google that who did this earlier, Google or NEC? Now, NEC is a big multinational company, completely failed to understand the significance of the work that their own scientists were doing. Didn't do anything. Lee Giles got so angry, he quit, went to Penn State University, where he is a professor. And this young man, he joined Google. And the Google desktop is his creation. You can just Google him and you will find out. So Google tells you that this happened there before. So this sort of thing is also a lesson in history of major developments where organizations which ought to know better do not know better. Okay? And so here is a failed opportunity of cashing into perhaps the biggest prize that was available in the technology sector around that time. And a big company messed up. So this sort of thing also is a lesson of history, that too much emphasis on what you know and too little interest in what you do not know makes people make such mistakes. Okay. All right. So now I ask them a question. So I go to AI, simple AI, and I ask this question. Does TIFR build weapons for India? Right? Now, this would be a no-no question, 20 years before. You shouldn't even ask this question, but you can ask AI, and AI gives you a reasonable answer. Now, let's go through the AI answer, because this is about your institution. What does AI know? AI says, first away, which we had to have a difficult time explaining, that no, the Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, it does not build weapons. Okay? It's a premier national center dedicated to basic fundamental research in fields like physics, biology, and mathematics. While TIFR is not a weapons manufacturer, it played a critical historical role in the birth of India's strategic programs. Okay? Then it says, foundation of the nuclear program. Dr. Homi Bhabha founded TIFR in 1945 as the first step in building India's nuclear science infrastructure. Then it said split of duties. This is all history you know, and if you don't, you should. AI already knows. Okay. Split of duties. In 1954, the Atomic Energy Establishment Trombay, now BARC, was created to handle the applied and technological side of nuclear energy and weapons development. Most of the personnel working on reactor design and metallurgy were transferred from TIFR to BARC at that time. Okay. So this is, let's just do a little bit. Civilian focus. Today, TIFR operates as an autonomous institution under the Department of Atomic Energy. It maintains a strictly civilian and academic research profile, so much so that it has to provide end-user declaration to international companies to ensure its equipment, like supercomputers, is not used for weapon-related work. I personally have signed such documents. Okay. That we don't do weapons, and some of you who remember are buying Cray 1 and Cray X1. So then it goes on to say who does the weapons, right? So it tells you who does it, okay? Then in red, it asks this lovely question: are you interested in learning more about the different research areas TIFR focuses on now? So what a wonderful thing, right? So you ask this question and you get an answer, and it actually tells you what you really want people to know. Okay, at least we think that's what we want people to know. So this is a question like that. Now, I took a more complicated question because this gentleman I have an obsession about this particular person. Very famous physicist. You know him for this ionization equation. So so if you're a Bengali like me, we have a tradition of calling people, eminent people, by the forename of Acharya. He's the great teacher, and we had two. Roads are named after them: Jagadish Chandra Bose and Prafulla Chandra Ray. But afterwards, other people began to be referred to as Acharya. And the examples are the linguist Suniti Kumar Chatterjee, the philosopher Brojen Seal. Lately, some people have been referring to S.N. Bose also as Acharya. But rarely do you hear Meghnad Saha mentioned as an Acharya. So the question I asked, is he an Acharya? And then it says that the title Acharya in the context of the such and such is more of a communal honorific than a formal academic degree, and its usage was deeply tied to the specific roles and personalities. While Meghnad Saha was undoubtedly one of India's greatest scientists, he isn't usually referred to as Acharya. It could have tried to satisfy me, its customer, by giving me wrong information. So I made it try to go, I tried to make it go wrong, and it didn't. So it said, no, he isn't. And we'll come to what more it has to say. So then it says what we all know, at least in Bengali, we know these are the people. They were pioneers who built the foundation of modern Indian science. By the time Saha, who was a student of P.C. Ray, reached his peak, the tradition of naming had begun to fade in favor of modern academic and political titles. Scientific versus social identity. P.C. Ray was called not for his chemistry, but because he was a teacher, philosopher, etc. Saha, by contrast, was a visionary reformer and a politician. He was more associated with nation building, planning, and hard physics than the traditional guru archetype. Okay, so this is clearly not boring stuff. This is people have already thought about it. Now you ask the reverse question: why is Meghnad Saha not called an Acharya? And if you ask this opposite question, you get brilliant analysis of things that are worthy of a very good undergraduate paper for assignment. And it tells you the context. Again, it mentions these two people. Then research and policy, then says he's a relentless research scientist who did all of this, including the Valley Project. His temperament was forthright, almost to the point of being harsh in his scientific arguments, etc., etc. And then says this direct, often abrasive nature contrasted with the typically revered paternalistic image of an Acharya. They're saying that he's just way too harsh than to be, called an acharya, who is kind of a peaceful, grand character. Then it differentiates between him and S.N. Bose. And then finally, this key thing, there's a lovely play on him going on. Due to his lower caste upbringing and his direct approach in addressing societal ills, he was sometimes ignored by the mainstream upper caste establishment of the time. While he did not receive the title Acharya, Saha is remembered by other monumental titles, such as the father of the famous Saha equation, or a pioneer who decoded the secrets of starlight, reflecting his foundational contribution to astrophysics. Now, remember, it also tells you here that it's regular, not a deep dive. If you do a deep dive, you'll get much more. So this is just to give you an idea of the kinds of questions you can ask, okay, and you get answers. So what is my role? My role is only to ask a certain set of questions, and you can ask other questions. So if you take one thing away from this lecture, and that is you do not need somebody to tell you more. You have at your disposal enormous amount of power to learn about these sorts of things. If you want to be a pro, on the other hand, then that's a different ballgame. But for running your life, learning things that you didn't know, AI is a very good tool to have. All right, so let's see what comes next. So again, instead of asking IBM, you can go to OpenAI, and I'm not going to go through this. It goes into some more detail. It tells you what it does, what it doesn't do, machine learning, deep learning, all kinds of stuff. And it also points out that everyday life is healthcare, finance, transportation, etc. It looks a bit like an IAS officer writes a note for the ministry. That sort of thing also comes out of this. Now let's see. Okay, so this is what I promised. So we'll begin and end with this, chess. Okay. Now, many of you are very young, and the people who are not very young obviously know this. So this was a momentous event in 1997. Okay, the year is interesting, actually. So this is when the thing is, the computer's capacity is just is growing like crazy. So this is Garry Kasparov, according to many people, perhaps the finest chess player ever to have played the game. And he loses to IBM's Blue Gene. Okay? So the computer has now, so here is this man sitting with his hands covering his face at the moment he realizes he has lost. Okay. And on the other side of him is nobody. It's just his computer screen, and where he's playing against that. Okay. So what happened? So let's look at what happened. So these are people in a stadium-like place who are all watching this game live. And this is the moment where you can see from their expression, oh, he has lost. Okay. So he lost. And, is the first computer to beat a reigning world chess champion. Okay. Now, what happened? Again, it's an advertisement also, it's a publicity for the company. So it says 1996, Deep Blue played Kasparov and winning the first game, but losing the match 4-2. But then less than a year later, played again and win for the first time. Okay. And what was the significance? And it tells you the significance, and I'll tell you this is not true. This was the first major test for Deep Blue. It was the first big man versus machine match. The rematch was the subject of a documentary film. Game over, Kasparov and the machine. What did the match show? Here comes the ad. Deep Blue's ability to calculate millions of positions per second proved that a computer could match a human's mental faculties. The match gave scientists and engineers insights into the capabilities of multi-chip systems. These systems have been used to develop better cars, airplanes, and drugs. Okay. All of these are factually correct. But what happened actually is Kasparov went into a deep depression. Nearly for 6 years, this great chess champion just could not believe that he lost to a machine. And then he wrote a very moving piece, and I suggest you read that piece, when he realizes he hasn't lost to a machine. He has lost to the programmers of the machine who built the machine. Okay, so then he kind of feels a little better that it isn't really a machine that beat him. It's the human beings behind the machine. And they actually also cheated. IBM did cheat in certain ways in order to beat him. Would have beaten him anyway. But I'll come back to this later, just to show what's happening today versus what happened then. And the resilience of us in turning defeats into opportunities, the main point I'm making. All right, so let us see. So I'll just take this very quickly because students in most places like this very much. So the year 2000, those who have been here before must have seen me or heard me give this. So in the year 2000, end of the millennium, 1,000 years, asked the question, who are the most important 100 people of the previous 1,000 years. And the top 20 were done not by machines, but the names are very interesting. If you go from 20 on up, Adam Smith, the economist, then Michelangelo, the artist, John Locke, philosopher, then Mahatma Gandhi, the only person from our part of the world. The rest are all Western. Then just above him, paradoxically, Hitler. Then Jefferson, Edison, Pasteur, Freud, Da Vinci for science. Galileo, Copernicus, Einstein, Marx, Columbus, Shakespeare, Darwin, Luther. This is Martin Luther of Reformation. Isaac Newton, and where you would have thought this is the end. I mean, how can anybody be better than Newton? And to surprise all of us, it says no. It's the guy who is the engineer who built the printing machine. Okay. And I have done a log scale. 1 is Gutenberg, 10 is Galileo, and 100 in this is Suleiman the Magnificent. And Suleiman was the Ottoman emperor during whose time Ottoman Empire reached its peak. Now, this could have been Akbar, for instance, but it wasn't. It was Suleiman. So there is certainly a bias, but you will also notice how many quote-unquote scientists are here in this top 20. Okay. And the chair of the committee was a professor of literature at Yale. And he explained that after all this happened, they realized the last 1,000 years, the last 500 years is really the victory of science. And no other millennium had put science so much in command. So if you want to know about this, you find that science was the dominant thing that happened. Important, not popular, not, these are not the richest people, not the most popular people, not the more powerful people, the important people. Okay. By the way, I mean, this Hitler versus Gandhi, always, makes people feel very unhappy. But they pointed out that Gandhi's good was not as big as Hitler's evil. So that's why Hitler came about. All right. So let's just take this. Okay. Do you know this gentleman? Professors excluded. No? How many physicists, students? Nobody knows him. Okay. His name is Subramanian Chandrasekhar. okay, the Chandra program named after him. And he gave a lecture called Ryerson Lecture. And this is a book. And this Ryerson Lecture is Shakespeare, Newton, and Beethoven, Patterns of Creativity. So he has taken three people from three entirely different fields: musician, scientist / mathematician, and Shakespeare, the dramatist, and says, how are their creativity similar or different? And so the question, in this, there is a hint that creativity isn't exactly the same. Creativity have patterns, and the patterns are not the same in every area. So he goes into this. It's worth reading. I wouldn't say it's a great piece, but it still is a great man. Therefore, whatever he says is sometimes worth reading. So I go instead to AI and ask the following question: what is creativity in physics? I won't read all of this stuff, but again, it's a business model, and you can see if you ask other questions, they will come exactly in this format, okay? Because they are trying to sell you something, sell you an idea, okay? So it gives example of creative thinking in physics, and the thing they chose is Rutherford's model of the atomic nucleus, the atom, in fact. And then Rutherford didn't fire anything. But anyway, he analyzed the data. And so it says you can use multiple approaches and so on. This is not important that you read all of this, because you can go to your laptop and ask the same question. And I bet you will get slightly different answers. Okay? So your questions are not large enough to exhaust the capacity of the system. These are called large language models. And they are so large that unless you ask a very tough question, the answer is non-unique. Okay? So that also tells you how big they really are. Okay. So now let's see, where do we go here? All right. So I now take a slight detour by telling you that this problem of AI has its origin in other versions. Okay, and this humanities versus science debate is one of them, very central one. And a very little known fact is that the great William Blake, he hated Newton. And he pointed out that Newton destroyed human creativity, okay, by putting everything. He said he unweaving the rainbow, because he also had a prism where he spread out the lights. He unwoven the rainbow, and and he said that he emphasis on imagination. Blake believed that the human imagination was essential for understanding the world, and Newton's laws, by focusing solely on measurable aspect, stifled this creative potential. Okay, so you can see this recurring worry that creativity, or quote unquote soul, whatever that may be, is missing for anything that's a machine. Right? And this argument, this says, okay, Newton he called him an Uruian, whatever that means, and he even drew him. And before I show it to you, I show this lovely quote from Keynes. Newton was not the first of the age of reason. He was the last of the magicians, the last of the Babylonians and Sumerians, the last great mind that looked out on the visible and intellectual world with the same eyes as those who began to build our intellectual inheritance rather less than 10,000 years ago. Okay, so not the first of reason, but the last of the magician. Okay, so every argument, that description that you get in, there is this notion of something that's not explainable. as if, non-explainable AI, which is magic, which is not reason. So this dichotomy is at the heart of the problem that we face today when we are dealing with AI, because we haven't changed quite as much. So let's look at his picture. So this is what his oil painting looks like in Trinity College, and this is Blake's drawing. So this strange person is actually drawing all kinds of geometric figures and is converting the entire world into calculable figures, taking away your ability to imagine. Now, I don't know about you, but I mean, it will be very hard to think that Newton actually hurt us. And he not only gave us laws, he actually, in fact, told us that there are laws. And the laws are not going to change tomorrow, right? I mean, what a profound impact a person could have had. And to say that that person is, responsible for this calamity of your imagination is very strange. History has judged Newton, and it's given its verdict, right? So, but at the time, there were a lot of people who supported Blake. Why? Because, Blake felt, as a poet, felt threatened. So do we, when we face AI, and we feel threatened because it's new and we don't know how to deal with it. Let's keep going. So this is something that I pointed out, and this came out in scientific reports. That's why I'm showing it, saying that AI-generated poetry is indistinguishable from human-written poetry and is rated more favorably. And the human representatives, this is in English. If you do in other languages, the results will be quite different. But here are these, from Chaucer to Lasky, Shakespeare, Butler, Byron, Whitman, Dickinson, T.S. Eliot, who's who of English poetry, and saying that AI can generate poetry, which is better. Better by what? Not by big margin, and by kind of a poll. So you might even say that mediocre poetry is more accessible, therefore. So there is a whole different argument that goes forward, but I'm just going to just show you just for the sake of showing it. Okay. So now there are some things that you can hang your hat on. Gaussian integral. If you ask AI to do the Gaussian integral, it gives you the Laplace's Gaussian integral, which was the coolest thing, I think, most of us, when the first time we ran into how to integrate, integrate a Gaussian, we all felt like, wow, how beautiful is it? And so there are other more, tenuous ways of doing it, but this is Laplace's solution. It's beautiful, and, square root of pi. Who could have thought, right? And this is so this comes every time. It doesn't change. No matter how you ask, this answer is this answer. Okay, so there are some things that the people who know this tell me that even this is a voting procedure, that they're looking at surveys and saying who is saying what, and almost nobody does anything else. Hence, this must be the right answer most of the time. So that takes care of that. Now, I'm going to go through very quickly, and because this bit has to do very specially about colonies like India, where technologies had, particularly the Industrial Revolution, had done enormous damage to us locally, while globally it helped mankind immensely. And here is a fact that during the Mughal period, India had, is a very well-known number now, that because of AI, India's share of GDP was quarter of the entire world. When India became independent, it was 3%, and it's a very large difference. And the large difference is largely due to the fact that India did not participate in the Industrial Revolution except as a captive market. Okay. And this is what leads to this picture. And I don't dare ask anybody who may not know the person. It gets scary sometimes. So here is a charkha, and charkha was used for that reason. So this whole business of indigenous and be self-sufficient and self-reliant was based upon that experience of the Industrial Revolution. And here is something called the spinning jenny. This from Manchester is the first major thing, weaving machine that looks a lot like charkha, except it was about 10 times as powerful. And then if you go to the next one, this is a cotton mill. Now, how are you ever going to compete with the cotton mill with a hand-woven charkha? But that isn't quite the final story. The final story really is that handmade stuff is now very highly valued. Their prices have gone up, and only the most wealthy can use it. But that's a different story. So the point is that this kind of historical events makes us, more susceptible to thinking of technology as a potentially an enemy who is out there to harm you, to hurt you. So, modern times, I'll just go through this very quickly. This is a quote from Faulkner: "The past is never dead, it is not even past." And this is a figure from the movie Modern Times. You know who he is. Let's see. So again, very quickly, I'll take you from this business of Gutenberg, Da Vinci, Michelangelo, all these people, then the Protestant Reformation, scientific revolution. This is where the difference has set in. Newton, Dalton, Faraday, Darwin, then then James Watt. You remember the story of the bubbling kettle lid. And then out of this comes this extraordinary thing by this young man, Sadi Carnot, field of thermodynamics. Okay, so, and C.P. Snow, in this very important book, says that this separated the world into two cultures: people who could deal with technology and people who couldn't. Okay, and then this book talks about that. Okay, let me just go to this printing press. Now I have 10 minutes. Do I have 10 minutes? Okay, let's see. Printing press. Printing press, what did printing press do? Printing press, again, there are lots of things here. So printing press, when it came, today you will find it difficult to believe that anybody would oppose a printing press, but then they did. In fact, the authority figures, the Roman Catholic Church, was the main enemy of the printing press, and they didn't like the fact that the common person will have access to knowledge, access to information that was their privilege. Of the monasteries, the monks only had knowledge. Common man should not have knowledge. Things have not changed, right? You look around, same thing. Catholic Church and other institutions feared the loss of control over religious doctrine and rapid spread of Protestant literature. That was their history. So it gave you censorship. It said what you could print, what you couldn't print. Control of information came with the printing press. So this technology, which made all the people in that list available to ordinary human beings, that you wouldn't have been able to read Shakespeare had it not been for the printing press, was considered to be not a good thing. In fact, there's a very interesting point that the calligraphers and in India, the people who wrote all these puthis, they obviously would not have liked, because their jobs would go. Who would be a calligrapher if you can read a printing press? So the calligraphers in that Ottoman Empire prevented printing of books by 200 years. These are interesting facts. 200 years. If you were in the Ottoman Empire, which was very large, one of the largest, you couldn't print a book. So this had happened, but printing press won out, as we know. But did it, winning out, this is a separate version. So roughly the same thing. It, says the scribe's backlash. This is a different version. Same question, different set of answers, written differently, but essentially telling you the same thing. So let's see. Okay, so just a curiosity, and you'll forgive me for putting stuff from my part of the country, is that creativity came back into the print medium simply through all these fonts, right? Fonts, covers, where the artists found their own niche, particularly people who are graphic artists. And here is a Bengali book, whose cover was done, and all these, the Roman, the Bazaar, Daphnes, all of this were done by this gentleman, which you probably could have guessed. Okay, so I'll show you one more. So this is a book where the painting by Tagore comes on the front, and you can see how beautiful the cover looks like, and it's really artistic. So even the books, more people get to see this particular painting of Tagore because of that book, rather than the painting itself. So there are ways of sneaking back in and find your niche. And this little fact, that his handwritten letters, which were all published, by the way. So handwritten manuscripts sold recently for about 6 crores at this auction. And so this now becomes, which was, in the old days were not available to common people. Again, not available to common people. These manuscripts now have acquired a particular character of their own, and again, the wealthy and the more have access to such things. Okay, this is another very interesting thing, but I'm, as usual, running out of time. But you read this: battle between photography and art. Okay, so when photography came, what happened was artists immediately revolted against photography, saying that this is again a soulless, characterless activity, which is just destroying arts. And Baudelaire, the great Baudelaire, called photography the refuge of failed artists. But photography could have done something which art couldn't have, and now let's see what art could do that photography couldn't. So let's just go and just quickly, I'm just say the most important thing, that photograph was realistic. It took a photograph of something. And therefore, there was no point anymore of trying to paint realistic things. You couldn't beat photography in making realistic things. So it freed art from realism. And the great art, if you go to the great museums of the whole world, you will see rooms jam-packed with people where it's non-realistic art that is being shown. Okay. So these are 2 examples. These are famous ones, but this you may not know. Hockney and a physicist friend of ours, Falco, they had a thesis that widespread use of optical tools, such as lenses, curved mirrors, etc., were used in early Renaissance to produce painting of such extraordinary quality that you go from one room to the next, suddenly it changes. And this is very controversial, particularly art people don't like the idea of using scientific tools, but tools became good enough that lenses could be used to draw paint that you couldn't do before. So that's just another example. Okay, so photograph. So here is a very famous photograph by a man named Cartier-Bresson who could catch moments. Okay, so this is a man leaping and he catches that person at the moment of leaping. And here is another painting which is very famous, used to be very famous. And this is more than a photograph. This is actually a story. And a photograph captures this extraordinary story, which is obvious by looking at this picture. Okay. And this was by Cartier-Bresson, who was in India during India's independence and took some extraordinary photographs. And this is one of Lord Mountbatten, Edwina Mountbatten, and Pandit Nehru. Obviously, something funny is going on here. And this man is trying to not be smiling, etc. Anyway, so the point to be made again and again is that an artist could not do this, right? This could not catch a moment except by reproduction, but the artist could also could not capture these things, but it could do something different. What was the result? The result was extraordinary. The result was the photographers began to experiment with soft focus photography to make it look like their paintings. Okay, and here I show you 4 examples. Okay, 2 of them are paintings and 2 of them are photographs. And you will be hard pressed to tell me which ones are photographs and which ones are painting. Right? You probably can, but not so easy. Right? By the way, do you know which ones are photographs? I'm hearing different opinions. One person, you said? No, it's a Renoir. Yeah. So you see, he's using prior knowledge. Okay. Yeah, and how about the on the ones on the right? Is? Right prior knowledge. It's prior knowledge. It's Monet as painting of Venice. And this one is a photograph. Right? So, peculiar. Who would have thought that a photograph, which was going to, replace art, pushes art into some new areas, and then photographers want to be considered artists by soft focus and other tricks to compete with a Monet or a Renoir or something. Okay, so I should be done. So let me not tell you this. There's a bad history of in 1978, our government chose to throw IBM out of the country, saying that it's going to replace people. Right? It came back, different set of people got employed, but way too late. And that lateness of coming to computation cost us seriously, that we became just code writers. We didn't write any major algorithm that you can speak of. Now, there could be a PC, but let's not worry about that too much. Okay, so now let me end by going to, there's more, but let's not, let's end where I began. Kasparov loses to Blue Gene, right? Since then, no human being has played a computer again. But you know, humans still play against humans. In fact, I think most of you know or ought to know the current world champion, right? He's from here. Now, here is a very interesting statement for this gentleman. So he says Magnus Larsen is a terrific chess player. Larsen has, I quote him, has incredible instinct. In every position, his move is among the top 3 of the computer. Okay, so we have gone full circle back to first saying that computer defeated me, but now what is Prague doing? Both he and presumably this other genius, they have in their, they are actually playing with the computer as an aid. So it is now going, a top chess player today knows of possibilities that the greatest pre-computer wouldn't have imagined, because they have the computer as their tool. So I think I'm just going to end here with some things. If there are questions, I'll do. I'll just end by telling you something, that I came back to TIFR after a long time, and I was extraordinarily happy that I didn't see too many people taking selfies. Okay, I was worried that as TIFR changed so much that people there would also be taking selfies, because where I live, when I go out for a walk, that's all I see young people do, take selfies. So what is it? What is this business? And you can ask, I won't go into this any detail. I just end there because it really makes me unhappy to see people doing. So I asked them, is taking selfies a disease? And lo and behold, yes. It is now, there is a name given to it called selfitis. And selfitis is a disease which has been acknowledged and now being talked about, etc. And had it not been for my being upset with people taking selfies, I wouldn't have asked this question and wouldn't have known this. Okay. So this is basically, I'm just making fun of something. There are lots of things to do. Unless somebody wants to discuss it, I will not come here. I'll just tell you that we have faced incredible crises before. This one distinguishes itself by the speed. It's way too fast for human capacity to adjust, to adapt. And that creates a huge challenge. But my belief is, and we were talking at lunch, my belief is that it's the AI specialists who will cure the current ills to some extent. Governments cannot, in their wisdom, pass resolutions or policies to say, you must not have AI, because this bus is going wherever it's going and it will go there. And so it will be folly to try and stop it. It will be better to say that, well, this is a bus I need to get on carefully with some using some human natural intelligence. So I'll end there. Forget all this. Thank you.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. Open for questions. Just for brief times.
Yeah.
AI as an enabler or disruptor?
Neither. It's a superposition state, right? So your operator will project it in one or the other, like everything else. Right? So it would be too It is definitely not either or. It's both, because you know that it enables, right? One can pretend to talk intelligently about it using it. On the other hand, every day, my bank, at least I don't know what your bank does. My bank every day sends me a reminder there is no such thing called digital arrest. And nobody wants don't tell anybody your OTPs, etc., etc., etc. So, the police know it. The police now has, I'm sure Bombay does, Calcutta has, every police station has somebody who is a cyber crime expert. And they're constantly telling us older people to be careful because we are not so good at these things. So, yeah. Any other question?
Any other questions?
Please ask questions. This is TIFR. You ask questions.
Hello. A very nice talk. So my thought will be a little bit pessimistic, but in the past, when there was industrial revolution or scientific revolution, every time humanity always finds something to make it more creative, or humanity always find a way to survive. But now currently AI is still learning, but after like 100 years or after 200 years, when this AGI thing will come, that everything will be done by AI only. So what will we do? Like, is there a point to humans for becoming more creative? Like, as you showed two examples, right?
No. Look, AI is not going to, if your toilet isn't flushing properly, AI is not going to, not in near future. 100 years, I don't know. But it's very easy to give answers about 100 years because I wouldn't be here to say you were wrong. No. Okay, so I can give you certain standard answers. And so, for instance, I think it is already the technology people who are not AI, I'm talking about ML people, okay, language, okay. So let me just make a couple of statements, and there are more knowledgeable people here, and please, interject. And it seems to me that anything can be converted to words, okay, to language, like English, has a chance of being addressed by AI, because AI can tabulate correlation functions to wazoos and give you answers, right? So anything that could be done in words, AI has a very good chance at the current stage to be able to address it in some fashion. Okay. So that's just one answer, but not everything. Okay, so there's a statement, philosophical statement, that can you think of anything that you cannot speak of? Right? We think in words. Is there something? Now there is also hype. So people will say, well, AI is hallucinating, instead of saying AI is just wrong in that particular instant. The word use of this, the hallucinating, is a hype deliberately used to make you think that it has a human-like character of hallucinating. You just Google hallucination and you will find out it's just errors. So why do you want to elevate error and call it hallucination? Just to make it more human, right? So that it also hallucinates. Well, it just goes wrong. We are wrong sometimes. And so it too is wrong. So given this, if you take words away, computers can do a lot that AI may not, right? I mean, you can get a light turned on into your room using your phone. You can measure enormous number of things. That book, by the way, the book that came out recently is very good in giving answers to these kinds of questions. Now, these are actual practitioners. So if you can sense something, and if you can measure something, and you can create a response to that, then I would say that if you couple all of these things to some broad AI thing, it is doable. Okay. Now, if you go to TCS, okay, TCS is Tata Consulting Services, our largest software company in the country. TCS people, what will they say? They will say that be the human in the loop. This is just a code word saying that not everything will be done by AI. Be the human who will be in the loop of AI instructing AI through you. It's like my queries. See, the human in the loop will remain relevant because even if AI does it, you remain. Okay, so what's their answer? The answer they give you is that make sure you get your fundamentals right. Because in a completely uncharted waters, the best thing you can do is get your fundamentals right. Because then, wherever this thing goes, you will be able to reach it. You have some hope of reaching it. If you get too wedded to today's AI, tomorrow's AI is going to kill you. Right? So that means that, you have to take your classes here seriously, learn the stuff that is being taught seriously, know how to do a Gaussian integral, that sort of stuff. I'm not entirely joking, but yours is a serious question. I don't know the answer, but I don't know that we can imagine AI, because it is a loop. You can define AI to be something that does that. So, which isn't fair, really. Yes.
So scientists often pride themselves as being creators of knowledge creation.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of examples that at least you gave today, AI asking and various things, were more of knowledge assimilation. Do you see a difference, or is the borderline between? So you know where I'm leading to.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. Maybe others in the room will have answers to different answers.
I said,
So yeah, I would say that okay, so this kind may be an experimentalist bias. I'll say that if I have a huge amount of data, which is unprocessed data. Okay. If I processed it, I might have discovered something that was hidden in this unprocessed data. So therefore, a discovery is possible through an intelligent search. Okay. And if to the extent that you call that a creation, it is kind of a creation. But if you say that hitherto not done piece of work, I'll say an experiment, I don't see how AI does it. So somewhere somebody has to do something. AI will not. So sensors, if you say that the entire world is really sensors, evaluating the sensor output, and then taking action, if that's all there is, then I would say that you will need at least some hardware. And that hardware has to come from somewhere. So, okay, I'm sure I'll get.
So there is
Okay.
this whole thing about AlphaGo where it comes in the last moment to give you certain moves which is not done in the human history. So now, is there a fact in correlations? You don't know. Scientists also figure out those correlations, right? So whether I can find out something. That move was certainly not a text.
Yeah, but I mean, just to add to that, that the chess guys today, they're routinely using these chess algorithms as part of their training. Because training, you have to train, otherwise you cannot do anything. So, yeah, so the question is, I think, of the gradation of what you call creative activity. So discoveries are certainly possible, inventions perhaps not, whatever those words mean.
Thank you, Raj. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap up and go. Thank you again, Professor, for a wonderful,
Thank you.
very progressive. Thank you. Please join us for a tea outside the West Canteen.